Well, we're hosting Friendsgiving in my family, and that's the second time we're hosting it. So that's a tradition now. So if we're having the third podcast, then I think we're also on track on that.
Nice. Yeah, we're being consistent here, at least in the beginning. So today we're going to talk about supermarkets, we decided. And the reason is we're seeing all the data come in from all these quite interesting supermarket chains around Europe. And there's just a lot of really interesting both data and insights, and also, of course, savings that we can find. So we want to just talk a little bit about some of that, why it's interesting.
I think maybe zooming out a little bit, saying the thing that really excites me about supermarkets is tied to the mission we're on and into, which is to reduce the energy consumption globally. And I oftentimes introduce myself as we're like these over-ambitious people, because we're still a relatively small team, but then with a big mission. And the nice thing about working with supermarket groups is that they can actually help us on that, because this kind of rule of thumb is that supermarkets in any modern country consumes around 3 to 5% of the national consumption. So that is why it excites me to work with these mega consumers in supermarkets. And then, of course, when the numbers are big, the return on investment can be big, the financial impact and all of this. And I think that's what we want to uncover on this in this episode. So supermarkets, super exciting to be talking about that.
Yeah, and we can also just see that there's an increasing focus on, there's a lot of regulations, there's ESG requirements, all sorts of focus areas, but profitability is a huge part of these types of customers, right? And when you have a margin that is as low as you have in supermarkets, then any changes or any improvements to the bottom line will really affect the profitability quite a bit, right?
Sure, that's and maybe doing that calculation could be fun today, because obviously if you can save €1 million or £1 million on the bottom line, what factor, how much extra revenue, how many bananas do you need to sell to make £1 million on the bottom line? I think that's a pretty crazy number.
The banana factor.
The supermarket banana factor. Maybe we should coin that term, energy banana factor. So yeah, sure. And another aspect of it, one thing is, of course, operating profitability. But I just heard a podcast, Biking to Work today, where a CEO of a pension fund mentioned energy optimization as something that drives the valuation, where he said that there's this factor 20 on, so if you can cut your operating expenses, aka improve your bottom line with 1 million, then you're affecting business value 20 times as much, which obviously is also quite a thing, because here we're talking several million euros or several million pounds in operating costs that can be cut. All right, let's dive in. Where do we start? We have a few thousand supermarkets on Ento now. What has happened this year?
Benedetto, you've looked at the data. Is there particular insights you think could be interesting to discuss?
Yeah, I think so. The main thing about supermarkets, that from a technical point of view, like both engineering in terms of energy engineering and mechanical engineering, and in terms of just the software side from which we approach it, is that they are very large consumers. And this is also comparable maybe to data centers, for example, who might also be around 5% of a country's electricity consumption, depending on the country, of course. And of course, there's large industries large industrial sectors that consume the same. But it is the one where we have actually the possibility to go in and have a very large impact, because Data centers, okay, you can optimize the operations with reinforcement learning, you can optimize the cooling, but in the end, they need to be like always computing, right? Always available to do the work. And large industrial plants, of course, you can get a lot of savings, but then there might be like, you need to do a very custom work. You need to go there. You need to see what's going on. Maybe you need to do some installations that costs millions of euros just in terms of changing some large components of the system. And in this case, for supermarkets, we just have the possibility to go in from the software point of view and check the bad operations. So whatever is not going on correctly, we can detect that from software, and then we can give the right recommendation to energy managers and say like, okay, you are managing 500 supermarkets. Here are the 50 that are actually going to save you €1 million. And this is like the super exciting thing, I think, from the technical point of view. And then again, the super easy metric that we use to evaluate that is, can we see the ratio between the peak daily consumption, so the maximum consumption of the supermarket, of the site during the day, and the minimum night consumption. So this ratio is going to tell us the degree to which they are actually turning things off during the night, which should probably be turned off. And if they're not, probably there is some level of inefficiency.
Yeah, I just found this this slide that we did, and I think this is for. Oh yeah, it says 2,000 supermarkets that we have in our database. I guess now we're maybe closer to 4,000, but still, it's an interesting result. What maybe from here we can see better what the how this metric can be used.
Exactly right. So that there is like the right tail is what we are actually interested in, right? So all of those that have a very high base load compared to the peak, if we can just target those, probably we will have something that like these alarm systems that got disconnected, chillers that are working with wrong temperatures and wrong times, BMS that went rogue and was scheduled on manual ones for maintenance and then just is just on all the times. We have seen so many of these cases, right?
Yeah, and also just to be clear, maybe again, this is a metric that is calculated also from our model, right? So it's the base load and the peaks that are also independent of any effects like temperature and so on. So the listener will remember this from previous episodes, but there's a whole kind of statistical analysis behind these numbers as well, even though it's a simple ratio in this case.
So the important factors, Henrik, being cooling needs, maybe heating needs, but really cooling needs in a lot of supermarkets.
Yeah, exactly. That
public holidays, maybe. Yeah.
You have all of the weather data that can be also humidity and so on for ventilation, right? So now we've certainly established that there's a lot of interesting things to look at. Then Malte, it must be easy to convince supermarkets to listen to us. What are the, I guess, common misconceptions or common barriers that we're hearing out there?
Yeah, well, once you were asking that question, I feel like I have a record that's just being on repeat in my head. And I don't know if you can almost guess that if I'm saying sub-meters now, because that is, of course, if you have a huge consumption and you've done energy management for many, many years, then you have a professional energy management team, then more than likely you have installed sub-meters. And that means that you have done a large investment to install all of these meters. And here comes Enzo and tells you we can get value out of the main meter data without even integrating the sub-meters. And I think that is the misconception, especially here, that we oftentimes hear. So that's kind of a barrier of even entering the dialogue. But I think what has really helped, and kudos to our clients that have done multi-million euro savings on supermarkets, is that we can show them that that is not needed. But it is definitely a misconception that because we have BMS systems that are managing how our HVAC is running, and we have sub-meters, then everything is under control. And we just know that it isn't. And everybody that is serious within energy management knows that everything is never under control. So I think that's the biggest kind of barrier to entry for this.
Yeah, and I guess the counter argument would be to say, okay, maybe you can see something that is running, but how do I know where to go? It's a huge hypermarket in some cases. Maybe something is wrong in the bakery. How do we deal with that?
Yeah. So that's the thing, right? Supermarkets are to some extent very complex. Hypermarkets, non-food and food, and many chillers and active ventilation and cooling, and maybe a bakery in one and not in another, and so forth. So to some extent, they are very complex buildings. But to another extent, if you have 500 or 2,000 supermarkets from the same organization, they fulfill relatively they fulfill similar needs. There can of course be differences in size and all of that. But so to some extent they're quite unique, and to some extent they are very similar. And I think that is where machine learning is just a really good fit, because you can model the individual building and get an understanding of that, and then apply both the analytics on that individual building, but also compare it to metrics across your portfolio. For instance, the cooling starting point. If you just have a main meter, you can actually see which supermarkets are cooling at what outside air temperature. And that tells you something about the set points. And that's even that's a super advanced metric to go after. I think the metric you mentioned before, base load to peak, is much more simple and will tell you immediately which sites has problems. So I think there's both the kind of the first layer of inefficiencies you can find with these metrics, but there's definitely, you can go much deeper as well.
Is it just pulling up this one also from last time, just to illustrate, finding the set point of the cooling profile. So we have temperature on the x-axis and the effect on energy consumption on the y-axis, and we can see a pretty precise cooling profile even on a huge hypermarket, just based on the main meter data. Also, what we're often getting asked is then, what can you actually find? So one thing is, we just talked about cooling set points and base load, but how do I know what is actually going on and what the root cause of the issue is? I don't know if we have some good examples of that.
Yeah, I think Benedetto, you're nodding, but before you go in with some specifics, I can maybe start with the customer journey of it, and then you can add color to it. But I think most times, the first time you are seeing your entire portfolio being analyzed by our algorithms, the right approach is to question what you thought you knew, right? So if you think that everything is under control, you have to kind of take that notion and put it on hold, at least for some time, because what you should be thinking is, if some of our supermarkets can use half of the consumption at night as what they're using in their peaks, and others are using almost the same, then you have to start there and then say, what is on in those supermarkets where the base load is so high that is not on in the others? And the answer to that will, in maybe 95% of cases, be the HVAC. So it may be complex buildings, but it's still, the major issues are the HVAC systems. And that's a very broad thing. And then maybe Benedetto, it can be over to you to then describe a little bit about what the root causes behind that then is.
Yeah, so we've been developing, right, for the last year, maybe, I guess, this root cause analysis module in which we try to blend in machine learning and Gen AI just to come up with the most likely cause of the different things that we detect. And I think this is one of the features that usually kind of blows people's mind, right? Because it's like we come in, we have never been to your building, we have no sub-metering on. We just know an address and a one-time series, and sometimes, of course, we know that it's a supermarket, but then capitalizing on our understanding of how all of these supermarkets work, plus the machine learning and time series analysis capabilities that we have, then we can blend all of this and come up with a pretty accurate estimation of what might be the root cause. So is it more of a set point thing? So we understand that there are some inconsistencies when the temperature changes and when how we expect the consumption to change, or is it more a time thing? So things are actually being left on at the wrong times, and then this becomes even like a different level of accuracy when sometimes, you know, especially in Denmark, but also sometimes in other countries, we have these reports of kind of energy audits. So they know actually what kind of systems are in the supermarket. So
physical inspections.
Yes, physical inspections, right? So an engineer went them and detailed in a PDF, well, in an energy software that then outputs a PDF. What is the type of equipment that is there, if it's a heat pump, the power of the heat pump, how many of them are there, the lighting, and then we can just kind of take all of this, extract it, feed it also to our root cause analysis module, and then we get like super granular, like super detailed about what might be the actual system that is not performing at that time, and like again, without wasting one single sub-meter installation and everything, like kind of remotely, right?
And I think this is actually a very important thing, is that it's the product is part of the total solution, and motivated personnel and other technical systems that they've invested in, like long before Ento, is also a key of achieving the results. And I think that's a super important aspect of it, that we're just giving a helicopter's view and finding the poor performers and making them question. And I think that's a lot of, this is not just talking about the UK, but this is talking about France and Denmark and any other country where we have these mega consumers on, is that we're enabling them to have that conversation. Like this building particular, we have an increase of 400,000 euros if we don't do something about it. What is it? Well, we don't know what it is. It should be operating exactly like it did until the change date happened. Then it's very likely a system override in the ventilation or HVAC. That's one typical kind of root cause. Another root cause that I've seen is when if you have hundreds of supermarkets, all of the time you have supermarkets that are being modernized, right? So you have LEDs coming in, or you can have non-energy renovations happening. And then during that process, there's a mega waste. And when you're notifying the contractor that this is actually going to cost us this much, then they will alter their ways of doing this, because they can see that it's a complete waste. And then there's the third one, and then I'll stop after that, I promise. And that is the recommissioning. So if you have done a retrofit in a building, then the new technical equipment may be in completely standard settings, or you think you have commissioned it well, but something is overriding it, so it's actually not turning off when it should. And those are kind of the three buckets, maybe you could say. So you have existing operations where someone has been by and put something in manual or some system override. You have sites that are under construction and huge waste is going on. And then you have the third one where new sites are just not being commissioned right. Do you agree on those three? Is that also what you've seen in the data? Mind you, we get a chat notification every single time a client is saving, is registering and saving. So we get a lot of these.
Yeah, I think it's a super good point that, and also actually in all of these, it's really important that the energy managers and the technicians do something, right? And so there are no savings without them also taking action, at least for a lot of these cases. And so that is an extremely important point. I heard and we talked about alarm systems as well. Maybe that's an interesting non-energy related thing in these buildings, but they can actually be quite important.
Yeah, right. So usually I think what we see is that these the BMS systems of these large supermarkets are many times connected to the alarms, and so they will kick on like related to the alarm connection or well kick off. And so many times whenever there is a disconnection there, it's been overridden and it's been put on manual, or many of this just like both human and machine errors that happen on that in that direction, and then we just have ventilation systems that continue working during the whole night, maybe sometimes even lighting, and this of course, like when you consider the size of these facilities, usually amounts to a very significant energy spent throughout the year. And I think like you pointed out a key thing here with how invested these energy teams are in fixing the issues. And I think it's also one of the reasons why supermarkets are so relevant for a platform like ours, because given that these organizations have incredibly high energy spend, then they can actually justify having an energy management team. And many times, we talk to some of our prospects and we show them like very large savings, maybe sometimes in the public sector, and they're like, okay, great, but I do not have the resources to actually go and act on these suggestions that you're giving, even though like I would say, I don't know, hundreds of thousands per year. And on the other hand, like here, when we talk to these supermarket chains, like our goal is actually to give, we cannot fix anything in an automated way. So the goal of our product is kind of to supercharge energy managers with AI capabilities. And then whenever we get to these organizations that already have, a team of 5 people that are working on energy, sometimes a team of 10 people, and then we just supercharge everyone with Enthos AI, then it's like really great to see like what they can achieve like in just a few months by using all of this. And actually like also how happy they are and how like they are, like you really see the frustration that they had in like having like outdated systems or systems that were not giving like the correct insights, or that they were not able to use them to follow up on the savings that they register. So it's really nice to see how excited they are when they start.
Now they can get credit for the work they do.
Exactly, they can get praise internally, they can get credit.
I think something happened during the energy crisis as well throughout Europe, with especially for supermarkets, right? So what we saw was an increase in electricity prices that basically affected everything. And if you're a low margin business and one of your big costs are energy, and that can be several hundred million euros per year, and that cost is rising just 20%. And that is literally just 20%. It was much higher at times. That is affecting the bottom line. So I think there was also a top management focus for these businesses in every single country, where all of a sudden the people working in the energy teams would literally have the CFO on speed dial, or maybe it was more the opposite way around, where the CFO was all of a sudden extremely cautious of energy prices and aware of changes, and we've seen it in the on the spot prices. That was what was affecting the energy crisis throughout Europe. But what we're seeing right now, for instance, in a country like the UK, is that non-commodity charges are rising. So everything else in the spot prices, and that is also affecting it. And you cannot do anything against that, right? It's because our grids are being congested, and it's a way of incentivizing reducing your consumption. And the only way you can really do that on the short term is by managing the spend and cutting these few percentage, which you can easily do with good energy management. So I think there was really a mind shift change, but it's happening again, and it's still happening, and it really should be something that every supermarket chain globally should be focusing on, because which other few employees can create several million euros or dollars or pounds on the bottom line? Like, no one in such a low margin business. So it is really an untapped potential for in food retail. I truly believe it is.
Yeah, and one of the things that we've said a few times here is that the changes don't happen automatically, and we know that there's a bunch of companies that might be working on, fully automated control of these buildings. And this is what, if I were a supermarket customer hearing this, I would ask, why not? And we've also dabbled in it ourselves. How are we thinking about, closing that gap or not doing it? Is it worth it?
Yeah, so obviously this is something that I've thought about it a lot as well. and I think when you think about a supermarket as a business, the mission critical there is happy customers and like safety, food safety. And I think there's a reason that large supermarkets groups have been hesitant on doing AI controls, for instance, on their cooling. So process cooling, which is essentially a gigantic battery, right? You could easily imagine you could shut off the cooling for a few seconds when the frequency reserves were paying you to do so, right? In the markets. But that's not where we've seen these AI optimization platforms actually be able to play. So what we've seen is that they are enabling their ventilation systems, which, mind you, can still be big, but it's basically the 10% and not the 90%. So I think it's because of the kind of criticality of these systems that they are not doing it. And that's also one thing that, speaking of misconceptions earlier, is that some of them might have burned their fingers a little bit on systems that needed to integrate with the BMS. And that's the difference here, is that we're pulling the meter data, giving recommendations that can then be implemented. And it's not a long implementation process of something crazy where we need to integrate every single subunit in and a cooling probe in every single refrigerator.
Yeah, and you need to understand everything, right? Like, in order to do an actual automated control of these systems, you need to understand everything. And maybe for the 1 or 2 times a year where there's a big issue in one of your stores, then it's okay that you're tapping into the expertise of the energy managers or the technicians that are typically out there or can go there, right? And so the thinking is, yes, maybe it's possible in theory, if you really were to map everything and you're comfortable with the risks and all of these things, but it's just a huge cost compared to maybe just having the insurance that you can do something about it then?
I mean, right now, we're actually deployed at several hundred supermarkets where such a project was initiated but failed. So it's completely different. Like, one thing is control, another thing is what we call advisor. So and because it is mission critical. Imagine someone is getting sick from buying a product that could have been outside the regulatory requirements for storing food.
Well, also talk, call the CFO and say you spoiled 100,000 liters of milk or something.
Yeah, I'm not doing that. I'm not making that call, right? Yeah. But that's the interesting about removing energy waste, is really that what we're doing here is the entire portfolio at once, right? It's not about optimizing a little bit of 0.4% across everything. It's about integrating the entire portfolio and then finding the big culprits, like the HVAC system being on at night because the alarm is overridden because the set point was made wrong, right? It's really stupid things that are creating a lot of these savings. Not
But
to
then
talk down to anyone, what it is, like, in hindsight, it's always the stupid things.
Yeah, I think this also relates pretty much to what like this concept that we have of the waterfall chart. Like, we'll have to, if we want to get to the climate goals, we'll have to gradually reduce different types of consumption, and then eventually we can get to more advanced stuff. We can get to distributed generation. We can do this demand response in order to shift consumption to periods where there is low emissions, low price. But let's first focus on the things that are like the low hanging fruit, right? So the energy waste right now is super relevant, and there is not, it looks like there's not enough incentive from the market yet to do this very complex light control of assets. But at some point, like, probably the energy waste thing will be completely under control, and then there might be more incentive from the market because the grid is increasingly congested, more data centers, more distributed generation, etc. And then it will come, I think, from the electricity price and from the carbon from the carbon credits market. There will come more incentive to actually look into doing more of these things. And if you need to install a very expensive system in order to make sure that you never get outside of the temperature ranges that are allowed for that food, then you can do it because the market allows you to do that. But right now, it really looks, from our experience with this kind of customers, that it is better to do this kind of energy waste detection before actually getting into this very complex live control of assets.
But that's for any building owner. Like, we have to remember, like, it's not the 0.001% we're trying to serve here. It's literally every single building that we need to optimize on. So supermarkets are not there. Any global retailer in supermarkets would benefit from this. At least what we've seen across 4,000 or 4,000 or 5,000 supermarkets, right? So we have this tendency to think that predictive heat control is where the market is, and it really just isn't. 99.9% of the market isn't there, and the value creation.
Anything else updates? Malte, you're heading to MX.
Yeah. Yes, I have a very busy week. I think November is always busy working for us because we have a lot of pension clients that are moving to new asset managers. We have a lot of people that just want to do energy management from the year start. So January 1st, everything has to be ready, which means everything has to fall into place during November and December. And this recording here is on a Monday, and tomorrow is Tuesday, and Wednesday I'm heading to MX in London. So really looking forward to be speaking with some of our clients in the UK and hearing what's on their minds and challenging exactly what we talked about now. So I think people tend to want to talk about what's out there in the horizon and the net zero. And when you actually analyze their data, you know how effed we are. Sorry, the French, but that's 99% of the market is nowhere near any kind of net zero. Yeah, I'm sorry if I'm if I'm being too honest here, but yeah.
No, it's okay. We'll end on a positive note and just note that Benedetto now has more time for coding
Because I'm out
after a lot of events. Yeah.
Oh,
not getting
not
tickets from Malte all the time.
Yeah. Benedetto, yeah, you just came from the UK. No conferences for you this week?
No conferences for me. I blocked all of the time to actually, I want to give some more steroids to the measurement and verification tool. So maybe something to talk about next time.
Okay. Wow.
Nice.
Yeah.
Teaser.
Henrik, you're heading. Have you found out how to hack the sauna game in Finland?
Heading to Slush, yes. Actually, my first time, but I hear it's quite crazy. But yeah, meeting up with a few good potential partners. Always a lot of investors and so on. So that'll be fun.
All right. Well, on that note, see you.
Take care. Yeah. See you next time.
To the next one.